I played against one of the best duck chess players in the world. For those who are not familiar with what duck chess is, this new format was created by Dr. Tim Paulding in 2016. In this type of game, we have an additional piece, the rubber duck, that is used as a blocker. So after you make your regular move with your pieces, you have to place a rubber ducky on any empty squares. One of the major differences between duck chess and a regular game of chess is that we don't have a regular checkmate, but instead we have to capture our opponent's king. I hope you enjoy the video. So for this game, I didn't record it live, but we can go over the whole game as an analysis format, and I'll try to explain certain ideas so that you can become familiar with this type of variant on chess.com. So first of all, you can access the duck chess format or variant when you go to the website on chess.com and then you go on play and then 4-player and variants, and you're able to find it there in one of the modes, right? So you go to 4-player and variants and you can go to most popular, and then as you scroll down you can find duck chess and you can try to find some games there, or maybe if somebody is already playing, there's a lobby up already with a duck as the logo. That will be a good way to get into it. So one of my warm-ups before I play any regular games, I like to go on the variants page and see what games are up, what lobbies are up. I like to play a few of the variants like duck chess, I like to play fog of war, I like to play crazy house and 3-check chess as well. A few of the variants I really like, as well as 4-player chess. But I came across to this high-rated player, 2362 at that time, and when I saw the leaderboard, he was the number 4 in the leaderboard. For this game, we play a regular game of chess, but then afterwards we have to put the duck anywhere on the board that it's empty, that doesn't have any pieces yet, right? And you actually have to capture your opponent's king. You cannot just give checkmate, and because there are certain times where they can just capture your pieces and then block with the duck any checks, so you cannot really defend long distance or long range like that. So I like to go with moves like this, just b3 and then block, do a defensive block with the duck, so that the next turn my opponent doesn't just block this empty square, and for me to be able to put my bishop here. So I like to do this approach. You might want any other approaches, and here my opponent went with the same idea of bringing the pawn up, but then blocking my any center pawns to not control any of the center, right? Because if anything, I could probably go here and control more of the center, but I like to play a little bit more defensive. And after I developed my bishop, I blocked his empty square here. So now it's hard for my opponent to develop their bishop, right? Whatever they wanted to fianchetto it. So we keep going. As you can see, my opponent makes a move and then puts a duck blocking on any of my squares. I develop my knight and still blocking the square for the light square bishop, right? So there my opponent is gaining some center. I don't really stress out too much about it. And here I block, thinking that maybe my opponent will develop a piece and then block my bishop here, but he didn't do that. So develops another fianchetto there, and then it starts pushing pawns forward, maybe to just bring the knight like this, or just bring the bishop there instead. I'm not sure, to be honest. So just regular moves here. Double fianchetto, I believe that that's a very nice approach in duck chess. But here now things get a little bit tricky, because now if I don't move my knight, or even if I put my rook here, my opponent can always capture this pawn and block any defense of my rook, right? So for example, if I move my rook here and put a duck there, let's say, my opponent can actually capture this pawn in the middle and put a duck here, blocking this. So they can just get a pawn for free. So we gotta be careful in duck chess with whatever we do. So here I just go like this, putting my queen behind the pawn and blocking this one. So the capture of the pawn doesn't work anymore, because I captured this one square between the pawn and my queen. So if my opponent captures here, they cannot put the duck wherever it was before. They would have to put the duck somewhere else So I'll be able to just capture the knight for free. So this happens usually for duck chess. I believe that knights are better than bishops for sure, because they can hop over the duck. So that's one of the reasons why my opponent just went for that knight, to just capture and claim that he's better. So here you can see that I'm constantly putting the duck between the king and the rook, so I prevent my opponent from castling. It can be very annoying, but here now my opponent is doing a little duck situation. If I don't do anything, I have to block here, because if not, they can just capture my queen next turn, right? So now I'm just blocking there any attack from the bishop, and we're still keeping it there. It gets a little bit annoying, but you know what? Not too big of a deal. So now I just move a few pieces around, trying to block the movement of the rook. Now the rook is kind of stuck, but we can do a little, like, things little by little, right? So here, no discovery attacks can work or anything like that, because I can always just capture the knight and then block here the bishop, right? So if my opponent does something like this, I can always just move my queen and then just block the bishop's side. All right, so I just reroute my knight. My queen gets kicked out. I just retreat one square. For this one, it would just be a lot of little moves. You know, we don't have to get too excited with what we're doing. So here now, defending my pawn, double attack, but not too big of a deal. For example, if I were to, let's say I don't defend this. Let's say I bring my king here. You know, and imagine they have an extra attacker or something. We need to be careful, because if they were to capture this pawn, obviously I can win a piece, right? But remember that in duck chess, you can always consider, if they capture a piece, you can always capture like this and then block the defense, the defensive part of or side of the other pieces. So that's the reason why you cannot just give a checkmate to your opponent, but you have to actually capture the king with the pieces. So my opponent just trying to reroute the knight, maybe going for these ideas. And I was thinking maybe he wants to go for something like this. I need to be careful, because he can actually try to, you know, gain some pawns, although it might be a little bit tough. But now he's seeing, even though he's blocking here, he wants to probably go here and get a double, you know, a triple attack with this pawn too. So now I just subtle move. You know, sometimes you gotta like play the simple moves. You don't have to get too excited with things. And now here, I'm thinking, you know what? If I move my rook, my opponent is just gonna capture this bishop for free. So you know what? I'm just gonna move my bishop away. And here, I'm okay if my opponent captures my rook. I'm okay with that, actually. Because knights, I believe, are better than rooks even, are better than bishops and rooks. So I'm okay if my opponent just captures my knight. I'm not sure why my opponent didn't capture there, to be honest. So here, I would have probably played the move like just capture here and block here with the duck, because my opponent can always just bring this back. You know, just capture here, block with the duck, and then my opponent can always retreat. So maybe he lost an opportunity to capture a pawn there. So after these moves, I just go for the attack. My opponent takes my rook, and I'm okay with that. Now we need to be careful here, because my opponent has 3 attackers and I only have 2 defenders. But remember that I can always defend and block. So we need to consider that, right? So I'm still blocking, just playing slow moves, always blocking there at the center. Now I see that my opponent kind of wants to go for some idea like this, and my opponent's bishop is also looking at my bishop here. We need to be careful. I defend, my opponent goes there. I just defend with my king, so I can keep my defenders here. And if my opponent wants to capture this bishop, I'm fine with that, to be honest. Now my opponent finds a better square for the knight, maybe going for this square in the middle or something. Just little moves, little improving moves, and I try to find a better square for my knight. Little improving moves, and then my opponent goes for rook up for him, and I just attack it. and my opponent just blocks it with the duck. So see how that works? Just little block and it does so much for you, right? Here I just move my pawn forward, and I was worried about maybe getting my bishop trapped with the duck here, but I can just capture the rook. But also another plan could be probably push here and duck here, which forces my bishop to just go back and not do anything, right? Not do much. So just little pushes. My opponent doesn't do anything about this. I just capture with check, force a move first, because if he doesn't do anything, if he just captures here, I can just capture the king, all right? For duck chess. So he captures first, I capture here. I'm okay with my opponent just capturing my bishop. And I would be totally fine if my opponent moved his knight somewhere, and then I just bring my knight there to be more annoying. So now here I need to be careful because my opponent can try to capture my or trap my bishop, right? If I don't do something about this, my opponent can just go here with duck here, and my bishop is trapped. It would have to go here with duck here, and he can somehow try to win my piece, right? So I just block there so my opponent doesn't have that push of the pawn. He goes with the rook there, bring the bishop back, goes for this push of the pawn, but I don't do anything about it. I capture the bishop first, takes, and now I have a queen move with a block here. So if my opponent doesn't do much and doesn't block that, I can always just capture the king and win like that. But because my opponent is very high rated in this type of variant, obviously sees it, and I go with the knight here. So here my opponent can capture the knight, which he does. As I mentioned before, the knights tend to be better than the rooks and the bishops. So I go for this move, and now I'm blocking here because my opponent can always try to capture and have a passed pawn, and that's very dangerous right now. I feel like my opponent has the better game. Better piece coordination, although I can try to infiltrate, but it's very hard to win and capture a king with only one piece, right? Even if it's a queen, it's very hard. You can always just block with the duck, no big deal. So here, my opponent just blocks that infiltration with the rook, which is super nice for him. I just push the pawn forward, because now if my opponent pushes or captures here, I can just capture the rook for free. So after this move, I go with a queen takes pawn. Now my pawn is passed. It's very tough to defend it. So my opponent is trying to trap my bishop. I move my bishop back. My opponent brings the knight. I attack with my rook. Now the knight's attacking that pawn. And it's very hard, as you can see, to push this pawn forward. Just one duck there and it does everything for you, right? So we gotta be careful. I just start bringing my king. My opponent just captures the pawn, and he allows me to push the pawn forward. Rook there, king forward, rook there. Now I'm attacking the rook with the bishop. I can always just block here with a duck, but I just move forward. I'm trying to activate my king, despite leaving a few pawns, just because I'm trying to concentrate on this pawn over here. I have a passed pawn, although it's very tough to prove it, right? Because I cannot really do anything about it, about pushing this and promoting because of the duck. But I still go for my plan. My opponent just goes for this idea, hanging the knight, but trying to go for this pushes and this pushes because he can always just block this promotion square. I capture the knight and I call the bluff. You know, it's like I call the bluff. I don't think he can do anything about it because he has to always keep his duck here, right? He cannot allow me to promote a free pawn, right? And also we need to keep in mind the time. I don't know if you were seeing the time, but I was ahead of time, a minute and 50, and my opponent has 8 seconds and a half left. But remember that for every move that you make after you move, you have 4 seconds added to your time. That's why it's 5 minutes with 4-second increment. Now I try to activate my rook. The king moves forward. I just defend the rook because I know that my opponent's next move wants to go here. So I need to just be careful. I'm here, I'm ready to sacrifice my bishop, but he can always push a pawn and block this, right? But if he blocks anywhere here, I can always just promote. So, you know, it's very tough. My opponent just goes for that pawn. I give a check, but he can always block, right? The problem is that he has to block here. So he takes the pawn and blocks. I move my bishop away to prevent any push of the pawn. But my opponent has to keep on doing that idea. So now I capture this pawn and block the rook route to capture my king. My opponent gets closer and I defend and I prevent the opponent's rook to come here because he can always come here and block the bishop or something. I don't know. My opponent moves. I move my bishop just one square. My opponent attacks. I attack the rook. Moves. It's very tough. It's very tough. So I need to just move my rook here. My opponent moves there. Block. My opponent attacks. Now I go over there. He has this push now, which he does actually. And I just prevent any more pushes. I put my rook there. Now my plan is maybe if he goes for this, I'm not sure to be honest. He can probably go for this actually. There's some duck there. He didn't do that. Not sure why. So now I try to get a better angle with my king, maybe cover over here. I'm not sure. It's very tough. Here I'm just relying on luck. Hopefully my opponent blunders something. I'm not sure. I prevent the infiltration of the king over here to attack my bishop. My opponent covers with the rook. Now I'm going to attack this pawn. And then the king just moves forward. This is very tricky here. I don't know. I can try to maybe, I'm not sure if you can draw. Maybe you can draw. But here I can just try to capture this, capture this and then block with duck here maybe. But then he would just have this with duck here. That's tough. So I just prevent any pawn pushes, to be honest. Cover there, attacking the rook. Rook moves. Now I attack the pawn. King forward, but it doesn't do much, to be honest. Move the king. And now I give a check. The king goes there. Block. As you can see, it's very tricky, right, to do anything here. So I go for this idea. I capture this pawn because if my opponent captures here, now I capture this pawn. That's my plan. My opponent takes there. I take there and I block this rook. Now we are winning, but it's tough because my opponent will always put the duck there. So how can we win? The good thing that we have going for us is that my opponent has less than 10 seconds, although he's always gaining time, but I'm trying to complicate things, although we don't have that many pieces to complicate the game, right? But we try our best. Here, just get closer, prevent the rook from moving there. Now I try to be sneaky with my attacks. Block. And here I can just try to give some checks, but I don't do that. I give a check. Look at this. I give a check to the king and block the attack of the rook. So my opponent has to respond to that. And now I discover a little trick. Doesn't work. But then I start thinking, what am I supposed to do here? This is probably just a draw. But I give a check. My opponent goes there. Move there with being sneaky. I give a check. Block the attack of the rook. And now I bring this here. And now I started seeing that I need to just cut the king up and then start giving some checks to corner up the king. I started realizing these things. So I just try to not let the king go this way, although the king can always move here and put a duck there. So it's not the same as regular chess, right? So I attack the rook, block, check, moves, and now I realize, okay, I need to start cornering the king, which I do in a way. He needs to keep on putting the duck here. That's the problem. He cannot allow that promotion. So check, my opponent goes there, king there, and now we're cornering the king, which is very important for us, although he can always just move, but now he got trapped. So here, maybe a better approach for my opponent would have been just move the king here. Oh no, he can't, never mind. Never mind, because he cannot move here and do this because I would promote, never mind. That's why he has to always put the duck here. That's why he would, okay, now it makes sense. That's why he has to move there and keep the duck over there. Now I move my king here for a checkmate idea, right? And he would have to cover with the duck and I just promote into a queen. That's why. So here, my opponent just blocks with the rook. And now I just give a check and the king is stuck. Because now he goes there and he blocks here. So my opponent moves here and blocks here. Because if he blocks here, the promotion, that's a checkmate with the rook and covering with duck here. And he would have to capture my rook or not do anything. I would just capture his king. And if my opponent captures the rook, I can capture the king with my king. So that's a thing that you can do also in duck chess. So here he has to just go for something like this. I promote. I probably had a better promotion idea, but I'm not sure. So here I just have an extra piece. So I just move my king there. I'm trying to capture the king. Block here. Block there with the rook. And now my plan is, if my opponent moves somewhere, I bring my queen here with duck there, and he has to capture something, right? My opponent's stuck. So here, I capture the rook with all undiscovered check coming. My opponent captures my rook, and I just capture his king, and we won the game against the top 4 duck chess player in the world, 2362, which led to my opponent, let's see, my opponent lost 26.3 points and I won 15.6 points. So that dropped him a lot. And afterwards, I think he tried to play a few more games. Now he's trying to play even more games, and now he's down to number 6 in the world instead of 4. And we got a bunch of points from him, you know, and we did our job. We played our best duck chess, and I hope you liked this format. Let me know in the comments if you have played duck chess, how you like it, if you've played it over the board. I actually have played this format over the board, and I have these rubber duckies that I bring with me sometimes, and it's fun. It's a different type of game, right? It makes you think a little differently because we're not used to like theory or anything like that. So it's pure chess, pure fun, and makes you think a little bit differently and have a different approach. So I hope you like this video. And yeah, let me know if you have played duck chess, if you like playing duck chess, or what other variants do you like to play. So I will see you on the next video. Bye.